Hello and welcome to the Hoof podcast, episode 20. And today we're going to be discussing Newcastle United and Eddie Howe and the future surrounding the club because they've had quite a poor season so far, underwhelmed. They've currently got one win in the last 7 games in all competitions. And they obviously lost 4-1 at the weekend with one of their transfer targets during the summer, Hugo Ekitike, scoring 2 goals against them. And at the time of the recording, they face Manchester City tonight in the second leg of their EFL Cup semi-final. So, Charlie, we'll start with, well, first of all, I haven't even introduced you, so let's go back a moment. How are we, Charlie? And then we'll get into the Newcastle thing because I'm big on mental health on this pod and you come first. So off you go.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I watched Hull versus Watford last night, and that was truly a dreadful game. Ended 0-0. We played poorly to say that we're doing rather well in the Championship at the moment. But it's more about your mental health, though, Lewis, after last night's game with Chelsea and Arsenal, though.
You know what's really funny? I don't want to give him I don't want to give too much to him right now because he rage baited me last night. But Kai Havertz, if you're listening, mate, I've had enough of you, mate. Trolling my club. First of all, I'm having a little rant now, but first of all, he did the whole, took his unveiling picture for Arsenal at I think it was Jorginho's wedding, or no, Kepa's wedding, when he was still at Chelsea. So, first of all, he did that. Then he celebrated every single time he scored against us, and obviously kissing the badge last night for Arsenal. Now, to be fair, the game itself was a close game, and I was always like, if we do something, it's going to be against kind of what was expected. So I'm not going to kind of put too much weight on that game and obviously too much disrespect on Rafinha because he's done a good job so far. So it is what it is kind of thing. It was just Kai Havertz that annoyed me.
To say he's the one that helped you win the Champions League as well.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He gets a lot of respect for that moment, which I'll eternally be grateful for that moment. But it's like, you're an £80 million flop, mate. Don't start getting too big for your boots. Well, let's calm down. But kind of going into kind of the flop and a link there. Obviously, Newcastle in the summer, going back to Newcastle, they had what was probably a window of setbacks where they went for main targets. I've just mentioned Hugo Ekitike at the start of the pod, and obviously they didn't get them kind of players. So, do you think with maybe this season going a little bit kind of where they're underwhelming? Do you think it's the transfer strategy? Do you think it's more Eddie Howe? Where are you standing with why they've been so poor this season?
I would argue it's definitely been something to do with the transfers. I think they've just been unable to acquire the certain players from the transfer market. Again, yeah, as we say about Ekitike, because of how well he's doing at Liverpool, it's a big miss in terms of Newcastle missing out on the fact that they could have acquired a really good striker. No disrespect towards Voltemar. I know he's coming as a decent replacement for Alexander Isak, and I think really Newcastle will be chuckling at themselves that Isak has, well, essentially flopped this season when joining Liverpool. I think in terms of Eddie Howe, I wouldn't really say he's done anything wrong. I think, yes, Newcastle are maybe underachieving in the league, but in terms of other competitions, I mean, they're doing rather well in terms of the Champions League. Obviously, we've got the semi-final, which is happening on the day of the recording. If they do get something against Manchester City, I think that is a big success. But for me, I think it is the transfers. I think they haven't really seemed to, like, the signings just haven't, how to put it really is that they haven't performed as well as as fans have really expected them to. I mean, we look at Anthony Elanga. He was doing really well at Forest last season. When they signed him, it seemed that he was going to grow even more in terms of potential and just be this even better player, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And I think
It's a good point. It's a good point, sorry, that you said there, just on the basis of the players that they brought in. They didn't have much change in terms of the squad they already had, obviously, other than the big one, which was losing Isak. But it's funny how you said, it's interesting, sorry, that the players they brought in were meant to take them to that next level. Like you say, if you compare to last season, they've had a same amount of games in terms of they had Champions League last season. They got very far in the competition. They had obviously the EFL Cup. They won last season, was it?
yeah, last season, yeah.
Yeah. So they got to the very end of the EFL Cup. So they're doing basically the same competitions. And compared to this time last season, I've got a stat. Where is it on my thing? So last season at this time, where they were 24 games in, they were sixth place with 41 points. This season, they're 11th place with only 33 points. So there has been a drop off, but obviously they're still in them competitions. But yeah, it's just interesting there where there is definitely in terms of form and in the league where they've not been as good. Obviously, you can carry on kind of alluding to that and why.
Yeah, I think. Well, here's the thing as well. I think there is still time to climb back up the table, but again, when we speak about transfers, I mean, who are really like with this winter transfer window that's just gone? There hasn't really been any. I wouldn't say there's been any standout players that have really come in for Newcastle that look like they're going to change
I
the
don't think they signed
whole.
anyone.
Well, yeah, I guess so, but I think in terms of from what we look at with the summer winter transfer and the players that were coming in, it was maybe thinking, oh, these lot hopefully will exceed the expectations, but they haven't, and because of that, it does seem to be the case that maybe it's what's going to happen in this winter transfer window. I don't know, but yeah, like I said before, there is time to climb up the table. It's just a matter of fact if they can try and elevate the form because I don't think Eddie Howe should be under pressure because I think there is this for me there is this opinion that when the last time we're in the where did they finish when they were in the Champions League last time? I'm sure
I
it
believe
wasn't.
it was the quarterfinals because they got knocked out, but very narrowly by PSG, and then PSG played Arsenal in the semi-finals. So yeah, it was the quarterfinals.
Yeah, so I mean they had a decent stint in the Champions League. Obviously went around the competition. It did mean, of course, that I mean they had to kind of rely on match fitness with players that weren't going to get much game time, at least try and rotate the squad, which is going to be the same case this season. And whether it's going to make an impact in terms of where they finish in the Premier League, I'm not too sure because I'm sure I think they must have finished just outside the top six in that season in the Champions League. I think I can't really remember
Yeah,
off the top of my head.
I think one of the key points is what you've said there, which is it's not by any means a worrying situation, especially for Eddie Howe. It's like I think this season, in terms of the top four race and further down in that mid-table phase, has been so much tighter than we've seen over the last couple of years. It's like they're in 11th place, but if they get a win, they're straight up to like I think seventh or sixth.
Yeah,
There's a big kind of it's very tight in that gap as well as the top four. They're not that far off it. And I think as well, it's this idea that Eddie Howe has been someone who's been instrumental for the club over the last couple of years. And I think the ceiling has got higher for Newcastle, where as they've continued to invest more and as they've done better in competitions and won things, the expectations have increased. But by no means does that mean I think we should be shocked where they are, because 11th place at this stage in the competition, in the season, as well as I think it is unfortunate that they dropped out of the automatic spots in the Champions League on the last day, but they drew to the holders PSG on the last day. I mean, that's still an amazing result. So yeah, I don't think we should be worried for Eddie Howe. If you think back to what Joe said at the very start about Eddie Howe being a top class manager, and we had that conversation, do you still think that's the case with him? Do you think that there is someone out there that could get them to a higher level, or do you think he is the best man for the job?
I think personally he is the best man for the job. I mean, when you look at the longevity he's been at the club, like he's been a heavily reliable manager for them. It's hard to really see who can replace him and kind of continue to be like a consistent performing team. Because obviously, when we look at them in the Premier League now, I mean, but when Eddie Howe first joined, Newcastle were just expected to be this table that maybe would reach mid-table and it would be a hard push to try and get a top half finish. A top half finish now for Newcastle seems that it really should be happening, and we're even looking
Yeah.
at them being with all the money that they've got in the club now, they should be really getting European competition every season. And for me, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong Eddie Howe is doing. I think really, if we look over the course of when he's been at Newcastle, I think he has done a good job. It's just a matter of a fact, in my opinion, that with this season and where they are in the Premier League at this current time, people are maybe going to criticise them on the form and how maybe they should be doing better. But I think really because of how well they're doing other competitions, again, they're actually trying to defend their Carabao Cup. And again, Champions League, yes, they didn't make it to the autos, but I mean, they've drawn to, I think, was it Karabag they've drawn to in Champions League
Yeah, they've got
playoff?
Karabag, which, like you say, that will put pressure on Eddie Howe in terms of on paper it should be a winnable game.
Yeah,
They're probably expected to get through to the knockouts now. So if he loses that, I think that would increase a little bit of criticism. However, like you said, I don't think there's anything really to be concerned about. I think as well, a good point to mention is the fact that they have had a mix of injuries across the season. So they have had their squad dampened on many occasions. I mean, currently when they lost to Liverpool, they had Joe Linton out. Bruno G, I think, was just recovering, no, I don't think he played. And then I think as well they didn't have the likes of Livramento. And I think I saw the stat, which is that when Bruno G's been injured since he joined the club, they've never won a game. So it shows how kind of instrumental he is as a player.
yeah. I
So
think
yeah, I think yeah, go on.
I was just going to say with Bruno Guimaraes. I think when Newcastle don't have their most, I guess, influential players, I think that's when you think they're going to drop points, and it's probably a reason why they're going to drop in form. But I think, yeah, like I said about Joe Linton, Bruno Guimaraes. I mean, even players, for instance, like maybe I don't know, like maybe like Anthony Gordon, for instance, like players who kind of show promise, whether it
To be
is in a
fair though,
certain area.
there was a stat I believe, and it was at the weekend where in open play, it was his first goal in 32, or I thought it was something around the 30s, 32 matches,
Yeah, I
which
saw that.
shows that, yeah, it shows that obviously he's dropped off in terms of his goal output, and then they mix that with losing Isak. And Voldemort, like you said, has been very clinical in moments this season, and he showed especially promise at the start. They've now got Visser back after he had a lot of injury problems. So I do think the attack's maybe not been as clinical this season. A lot of the games I've seen and watched of them seems like they haven't squandered and missed a number of chances in terms of they are creating the chances, they're not taking them. I think one of the concerning things is their away form. I think this season they've just got 2 wins and a total of 10 points, and they're definitely at the bottom in terms of their away form, equal to West Ham this season. So that's probably something where away from home, when they're not in front of the tune, they seem to be struggling this season.
Yeah, I think that's one thing which I noticed with certain clubs when it does come to like maybe like a mid-table position is that they'll be like either heavily good at home but terrible
Yeah,
away, or it's the other way around. And I think it's quite remarkable how people don't realise that actually takes a bit of an effect on how your season goes. I mean, I can really relate, for instance, about like the Championship. For instance, Derby County have incredible away form. I think it's literally one of the best, I believe, in the Championship. But the home form has really been disappointing. And I think when you compare that with Newcastle, yes, the home form's been really good, and that's where obviously getting most of the points from. But the away form can matter just as much. And the thing is with having again not a great record in terms of playing away, it really gives the opposing team much more confidence, especially if Newcastle have influential players missing due to injury or maybe suspension. And that's what's maybe going to affect their season more if the away form doesn't improve. Obviously, you do want your home record to be great, especially with the fans obviously wanting to make a good turnout every week. But the away record has to try and match that if you want to have a good position, I think, in the Premier League. And this season, it's just not been the case for them.
that's what I mean. Generally, when I'm looking through their games, it's like they had a good purple patch at kind of the end of December into January. They got vital wins against Burnley, Palace, and Leeds on the bounce. And then it's just since then. But then if you look at the only ones for me, if you look at the clubs they've played over the last month, is probably they drew 0-0 to Wolves, which is obviously they're expected to probably win that game. And other than that, they've faced Liverpool, Aston Villa, and Manchester City. Three clubs. Or they played Bournemouth as well. But to me, they're all top clubs that they've played. It's not something to be concerned about. What we're going to do now is we're going to play a little game. So I've got their transfers from the summer. You've mentioned some of their names, Anthony Elanga being kind of a key one. I'm going to tell you the fee that they came in for, and then all you've got to say simply is success or flop.
Okay.
So, Johan Wissa, at the time of recording, this is more like what he's done so far rather than what he could become.
Yeah.
54 million pounds from Brentford in the summer. Is he a success or is he a flop?
I think because of like the injury definitely hasn't helped him, but I think obviously if we're talking so far this season, I'm gonna have to say flop.
Okay. Nick Voldemade, you've obviously mentioned a number of times, £71 million from Stuttgart, but it was to replace Alexander Isak. What are you saying? Success or flop?
I I will say success for Voltemad just because at least he's bagging goals for Newcastle, and I think the fact of it to replace a talented striker like Isak. Well, obviously he's not talented anymore because he's not doing well at Liverpool. But the fact how he's done well to kind of replace Isak, and he's probably exceeded most people's expectations. I would argue he's a success.
Yeah, he's got 7 goals in 21 games, which it's not anything special, but I'd say it's a good start. It's a good bedding point for joining the Premier League. Then we've gone Jacob Ramsey at £33 million from Aston Villa.
Oh, this was
I'd
a
say my
weird
opinion
one.
in terms of how much I feel like he's been injured and just he's not started many games. I'd have to call him a flop.
Yeah, I think that's. I think he's someone else who I really thought. I mean, obviously, again, it's kind of similar to Visser, how the injuries have. It's not
Yeah,
helped with his season, but he's someone I think that would have had a lot of hype and a lot of potential at Newcastle. But yeah, you have to go with flop because again, he's not had as many minutes as Newcastle would have liked.
yeah. He almost left Villa for that spotlight at Newcastle, and then he hasn't been given that. He's kind of still sat on the bench mainly. Malik Chaw, I think, is an easy one, but £30 million from AC Milan.
I think
Successful flop.
I think I would argue. I mean, I haven't actually watched him that much, I have to say, but I would argue he's been a success. I think he's actually been
Yeah,
pretty good
yeah.
for Newcastle. It's just one of them things, really, where I guess maybe he's not the player that receives the most attention, I think, for Newcastle. But I guess with, again, the fee that they've paid for, he's not really done a bad job.
Since the new year, he's had a couple of games where he's been poor, or he's been kind of he's been the one who's made a mistake in the games. But before
Yeah.
that, he was definitely praised and definitely came in and had a real impact. Aaron Ramsdale on loan, successful flop.
Oh God, this one's a funny one because I mean it's one of them where you think, well, how can you really replace Nick Pope and continue to do a good job? Some people probably might say flop. I'm going to say success because I think he has
Yeah.
managed well to at least compete and try and get in the starting lineup against Nick Pope, who's been a very reliable keeper for Newcastle. I don't think he's done too bad.
I'd argue this season from what I've seen of Nick Pope, and I think Nick Pope made a return against Liverpool after having an injury spell. And Ramsdale filled in for him and did very well. I'd argue that Ramsdale's been the better keeper. Just Nick
Yeah,
Pope for me has made every time I've watched Newcastle this season, he's been the one who's made a mistake or he's been at fault for at least one goal. And then finally, I think this is probably the easiest one. You don't even maybe need to say it, but Anthony Elanga at £40 million from Nottingham Forest.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
Successful flop.
I don't really say anything about that. He just, in general, has been a flop. I think. I don't know if maybe it's the fact how there's been a lot of pressure on him at Newcastle since joining Forest that he's been expected to be a really good player and everything. But yeah, just he just really hasn't been great this season, has he?
I
Especially
feel
with
I
the
feel
money
a
they
little bit
paid.
sorry for him because I feel like he's not a one season wonder at Nottingham Forest, but he had the season where he got something like 12 assists at Nottingham Forest last season, played brilliantly, but he's a player who thrives off the system. And it was Nuno Espirito Santos' system of counter-attacking football that played to his strengths. And
Hmm.
that's why he at least appeared such a good player. I think at Newcastle, it's a very different tactical setup, which isn't working to his benefit. And therefore, we're not seeing him be anywhere near as effective. And I remember Joe saying at the start when we mentioned him as one of the worst signings a number of episodes ago, and I remember it was like Joe was saying that he showed glimpses. He's shown moments, but generally has been extremely poor. And for the fee that he came in for, it has to be a failure. So we'll end the segment on Newcastle with just what we always do, which is looking ahead. They've got Manchester City tonight, and then they play Brentford at the weekend. Do we think? Well, no. Let's go further ahead. Do we think that they're gonna get a top four spot? Do they think, or do we think where do you think they're gonna come generally this season? Or what do you think is going to be classed as success for Eddie Howe at the end of the season? Just a
I
quick
think the
little.
way it's going, a success for Eddie Howe. If again, I guess if in terms if we're looking at Champions League, I think again if they can match like maybe quarterfinals, I would maybe argue that's a success. Obviously, with the cup against City, it's going to be a tough game. I'm not expecting much. The fact that they've at least reached a semi-final and try to defend the EFL Cup, fair enough. I think that's not too bad. In terms of Premier League, I would argue because they want to be consistently trying to get European football. I think if they can make the top seven from where they currently are at the moment, if they can make the top seven, I think that would be an achievement in my eyes. I think, but whether that's going to happen, I don't know.
Yeah, they're currently 6 points off of Chelsea in fifth place, which obviously isn't too bad. 6 points, I'd say at least what a success is for Eddie Howe is that he gets European football in terms of where he finishes in the Premier League, and I think he gets the knockouts in the Champions League in terms of they have to beat Karabag.
Yeah,
Where how far they go in that tournament, I don't think there's much kind of onus on from the fans and demand. I think that the fans, after the first leg being 2-0 down against Manchester City tonight, I think, as you've already said, if they get a result or if they manage to overturn that tie, is a bonus because going into it, they already kind of expect that that tie might be finished. Um, and then obviously the FA Cup, can they do anything in the FA Cup? We'll see. I think that they'll probably finish similar to you if they get around sixth or seventh place, because there's a number of teams this season, the likes of Brentford are doing overachieving. You've got Fulham up there. You've got obviously Aston Villa flying at the top. Um, Sunderland are surprising everyone, which they won't like. I think the main thing for them is to finish above Sunderland, seeing as they hate them.
yeah. I
So
think
that's
that
probably their priority.
yeah, they're not going to hear the end of it if they finish below Sunderland. It's to them. It's going to be a terrible season if they finish below them.
But yeah, that's basically a summary on Newcastle. As we've both kind of said, the overall argument is that we think generally there's nothing to worry about. They're having a small blip, but they are kind of where they should be at this moment in time. Maybe they just need to improve their form, and that's probably a possibility. So now it's time for a quick break, and then we'll get back into the quiz. Welcome back to the Hoof podcast, and now it's time for the long-awaited quiz. And yet again, Charlie's going to be taking it on by himself. It's more like a who wants to be a millionaire at this point, which is how far Charlie can get. So Newcastle faced Brentford at St James's Park, with Johan Wissa likely to start against his former side. And this is for the first time since obviously leaving in the summer. So with that in mind, I want you to think back to the first time Johan Wissa started a game back in 2022 in January, when he scored in a 2-1 win over Aston Villa for Brentford. So it's a 2-1 win for Brentford against Aston Villa back in January 2022. I've kind of given you one name because you know that Johan Wissa was in the
Yeah.
lineup when he started. But can you name that Brentford team?
Okay, right. Off the
Some of the
bat,
match highlights that people probably want to know. Craig Paulson was the referee. It was a two. It says it was a 2 o'clock kickoff. I don't think that's correct. Surely not. Probably a 3 o'clock kickoff.
2 o'clock. Yeah.
Unless it was a Sunday. Could have been a Sunday. Never know.
Maybe it would have been a Sunday if it was a 2 o'clock kickoff. I'd imagine.
Now it's important for you to know this, Charlie. It was a 3-5-2 formation.
A 3-5-2.
So, three centre backs. Then you've got your three hot midfielders, your two wide midfielders, and then your two up front.
I'm pretty confident about the goalkeeper because, well, I'm not going to say it yet, but I'm pretty sure.
Some of the interesting names that are in the Aston Villa lineup, and it's a very different lineup to what they have now. We've got Danny Ings up front. We've got Douglas Luiz in the holding midfield. Matt Targett's playing left back. Courtney House is at centre back, and anyone interested on the bench? Carney Chukwuemeka's on the bench. Jaden Philogene on the bench. Anwar El Ghazi on the bench. Steven Gerrard was the manager. Cameron Archer on the bench. There's some of the names.
Cameron Archer on the bench as well. Some decent.
We'll give you another minute or so.
Okay. Really
Obviously,
struggling with this one.
Brentford, January 2022.
3-5-2. You did say sorry for
Yes,
midfield.
3-5-2.
Okay, right. Let me just
Two up front, five in the
midfield.
middle, and then three at the back.
Pretty sure he.
One of
Oh,
the names on this bench, and I know you won't have said this, so I can say his name. But
okay.
Marcus Force is on the bench currently. I think is he at Derby currently? Where is he now?
Um. Oh, this is going to annoy me because I'm
His name
pretty.
came up the other day actually when I was watching a championship game, and I can't remember because was he at Hull at one point?
I
Has he
don't
ever been at
think
Hull?
so. No,
No.
I'm sure. I'm pretty sure he's at Derby. If I'm not
I'll double
mistaken,
check.
that's what I'm
I'll
trying to
double
remember.
check as you round up your answers, Charlie.
Okay, right. Let me just double check that I've got. Oh, there's one more player I can think of. I don't have a full squad because I'm really struggling for players, but
Oh, that's an embarrassing take for you, Charlie. He was at Hull City. I was right. 11
he
apps.
was.
Yeah,
Wait, which
January
season?
2022. Literally,
Oh,
you know the
right.
season we're on about with Brentford right now. This was
Yeah.
it, January 2022. He spent a couple of months there, got 11 apps.
Oh, right.
He's currently at Bolton Wanderers on loan from Middlesbrough. So we've got a you and Ben link there.
Oh, Middlesbrough is what I was thinking of, not flipping to
So that's your
Newcastle.
time up. Time
Yeah.
up on the questions. So we go with.
Okay.
Oh, actually, so what am I doing? You're telling me your lineup. Off you go.
Okay, right. So in goal, I've gone with David Raya. I'm sure he was at Brentford at
Yeah.
that point.
Okay.
Then I've only got two defenders. I'm pretty sure Pontus Jansson was still at Brentford at the time,
It's a good
and
take.
Ethan Pinnock as well. I think I can remember off the top of my head.
You seem
Um,
like someone on FM who's decided to attack at the last minute. You've got two centre backs and everyone else up front.
yeah, well, this is the issue. I think I've not got like anyone wide. I've got three central midfielders.
Who are
Um,
they?
Norgard. I've got Frank Onyeka and then Christian Eriksen as well. But I don't know if
Okay.
Eriksen was at Brentford at the time. Um, and obviously up front, there's Johan Visser and then Ivan Toney, and that's all that I've got.
You've got six. You've got six correct
Oh,
answers.
okay.
So it's about what I said. It's about kind of the guess that I said. In goal, I don't actually know who this is. His name's Fernandez.
Oh,
Yeah, his name is Fernandez. I haven't heard of him, to be honest. The back three is Pontus Jansson, and it is Ethan Pinnock with Sorensen in the centre, Beck Sorensen in the centre. I think he was more of a rotational player. Then we've got Sergi Canos on the left mid. The midfield three is Norgard, Jensen, who's still there, and Onyeka. So you got them two correct.
not two of them, yeah.
Um, Röslev, who I think's now at Salzburg in Austria, he's at right mid or right, wing back. And then you've got a front two of correct Ivan Toney, who got a yellow card, and Johan Wisser, who scored a goal. The other goal scorer was Röslev. Some of the names on the bench: Christoph Ayer, Vitaly Yanel, Shandon Baptiste, Mads Bidstrup, Saman Godos. Yeah, and as I've said, obviously, Marcus Force. So you got six. You're on six. Not too bad.
Not too bad.
So now we move on. So, question number 2. The round of 16 of the Coupe de France is underway, with PSG nowhere to be seen, having been beaten by close neighbours Paris FC in the previous round. When was the last time when was the last time PSG weren't in the final of this competition? When was the last time PSG weren't in the final of the Coupe de France? Was it 2020 to 21, 2021 to 22, 2022 to 23, or 2023 to 24?
Okay. I'm trying to think if there was a time where they were maybe potentially struggling in the league, and that's maybe why they weren't in the final of the tournament. Because
Yeah,
I'll be
so which
honest,
of
I
the
don't.
4 consecutive years? I need an answer,
Yeah.
Charlie.
I'm gonna go with 22 to 23.
That is correct. So you're up to
Oh,
7. Leeds host Nottingham Forest in a relegation six-pointer on Friday night. The first time the teams met this season, Forest were 3-1 victors at the City Ground. But who was their manager when they won 3-1? Was it Nuno, Sean Dyche, or Postecoglou? Which one was it?
Which one was it?
Forest were 3-1 victors against Leeds at the start of the season, but who was their manager? Nuno, Dyche, or Postecoglou?
Oh my God. What was the score, sorry?
3-1 to Forest at the City Ground.
I definitely can't have been Ange. I'm going to go with Sean Dyche.
He's gone correct again. You're up to 8. You've not got one wrong so far in terms of the questions after the lineup.
Looking good at the moment.
We've got another 3 to go, so here we go. Liam Rosenior and Michael Carrick are both having excellent starts in their respective roles at Chelsea and Manchester United, becoming the first English managers to win their opening 3 Premier League games. Since who? Was it Steven Gerrard, Sam Allardyce, Craig Shakespeare, or Gary O'Neill? So who was the last English manager to win their first 3 Premier League games?
I would be
Ben's
shocked.
done well here because I remember telling Ben this question, and obviously because I'm not doing the quiz, he's giving it to you.
Yeah. I would be shocked and not at the same time if it was Big Sam. I'm leaning
Stevie G,
towards...
Craig Shakespeare, or is it Gary O'Neill?
Maybe I'm underestimating Craig Shakespeare, but I'm leaning either towards Gary O'Neill or Stevie G. I'm going to go with Steven Gerrard.
You have gone wrong. Can you tell me, first of all, can you tell me each club that they were last at? So Steven Gerrard.
Steven Gerrard would have been Villa.
Sam Allardyce.
Would have been Leeds.
The last club is, because I asked you what last club it was. So I think it is Leeds, you're right.
Yeah.
Craig Shakespeare.
Oh, off the top of my head, I can't remember.
I believe he was at Leicester City.
Leicester.
I think Claude Puel or someone got sacked and he came in and then was like an interim or got the permanent job.
Right.
Or it might have even been Ranieri. And then Gary O'Neill was obviously last at Wolves. Yeah, Wolves. So, yeah, it was Craig Shakespeare was the correct answer.
I did underestimate him.
Yeah. And then now we're going to do a closest to. How many goals have Porto conceded in the league across their 20 matches at the time of the recording this season? You just got to give me a number. How many goals have Porto conceded in the league so far at the time of the recording in their 20 matches this season?
How many have they conceded?
Managed by Francesco Farioli.
I'm sure they've conceded quite a bit of goal. I can't remember what the goal difference is. I remember checking it with Sporting.
Pressure for an answer.
I'm just going to go with like 32.
You think they've conceded in 20 matches 32 goals?
Yeah, for some reason.
They've conceded 6.
Really?
They're top of the league. They're top of the league. They've conceded 6 goals. They've got like the best defensive record across Europe.
I swear they lost recently as well, like 2-1.
Well, yeah, they might have added 2 more goals, but they've not conceded. To be fair, 32 is not a crazy answer because I think Newcastle conceded 33 this season. But still, no, you're incorrect, Charlie. So we're still on 8 points. Can you get a final point to end the quiz? So, which Premier League player has picked up the most yellow cards this season?
Okay. God's sake.
Which Premier League player has picked up the most yellow cards this season to end the quiz?
Oh my God! I swear I've seen this stat, and I'm gonna just have to flipping guess, aren't I? I'm gonna go with Christian Romero.
No, it was Yerson Mosquera at Wolves, who I obviously gave an award to, and he got 9.
Yeah.
And that is the end of the quiz. And thank you very much, Charlie, for joining us. That's the end of the Hoof podcast this week. And obviously, make sure to follow us on all socials. Thank you very much, and bye.